What's up, gamers? Welcome to Battle Mallet Podcast, episode 50 of all things. Hexed, keep Ghur weird. For anyone that isn't familiar, the Battle Mallet Podcast is the journey of, let's just call it, three busy gamers at this point, playing games that they love, balancing life with those games, and occasionally talking about Nova, although we haven't done that in a while. Anyway, tonight's episode, whenever you're listening to this, is going to be our coverage of the Wyrdhollow, which is going to include our normal review of the warbands and the rivals decks that are included in the box. But before we get any further, I'm Jerod Johnson, and tonight I am joined by Trace Hyde.
I like things weird.
And Jason Table Noob Murray.
I thought it was called Tainted Thicket.
We want it to be called Tainted Thicket, but we don't get to choose the name, unfortunately.
Just remember, the first box in a season or like a setting is very phallic, and the other is not.
Yep. Yeah, we could do a whole episode on that, or we could not. I think we want to keep our MPAA rating as it stands, so we will not be doing that. Anyway, so yeah, we have a lot to cover. We're excited to talk about it. I think we're all excited about the new season and the new warbands and decks. But before we really jump into the meat, we do want to get caught up on what everybody has been up to, because it's been a minute since our last episode. So Trace, what you been up to since the last time we recorded? Do you even remember when we recorded last? Because I'm not sure I do.
Well, it's been a minute, so I'm just going to cover some things that I know that I've done within the past month or two. So I painted up Thundrix Profiteers. I've been playing with those a lot recently. They're a lot of fun in the Nemesis format. Been playing them with some Fearsome Fortress. Painted them in a nice bold yellow. I also painted up the Slaanesh Warband, which the name escapes me right now. The Dread Pageant. Oh my gosh, my brain. I painted them up in a lovely retro style with a nice goblin green base and some really bold and garish colors. Everybody seemed to have enjoyed them, so those were fun. I've painted some Marvel Crisis Protocol models and been playing a lot of Underworlds. I also have been playing in the Fury's Finest TTS Marvel Crisis Protocol League. That was a lot of fun. Ended up with a record of 2-3 in that.
Nice.
That ended this past week. And then, so a lot of Underworlds on our community nights we've been playing. I was not able to go to the tournament that we will talk about in a minute that we were hosting. And I have started painting a combat patrol of Space Dwarves for the impending Warhammer 40k release, to see if we would like to pursue some 40k again. I know, gasp.
Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Yep.
I do believe it.
Yep. Jason, what you been up to, bud?
A lot. There's been a lot of activity here on my side, south of the wall here in, King's Landing. But so played in the tournament, played Dread Pageant. So that was super fun. I'm sorry to say that Jerod has completely climbed out of my pocket. He's a jerk, and I don't like him. He stomped me round 2. Dread Pageant with Fearsome Fortress is a whole lot of fun. I won my first game on the back of Glissette herself. She tanked 5 attacks in a row, and one of those attacks was like fully supported, and I just critted out of it. It was fantastic. Ripa was trying to bite me, and at one point in that game, the game was over, and Glissette saving it allowed me to score 5 glory in an end phase, and get back into the game and win that game. And then I walked into Jerod and his Sons of Velmorn and was demolished. And then I played into Crushes the last game and won that one as well. So that was a ton of fun. And I do think that, you mentioned playing Thundrix in an episode soon to come. I think we'll kind of break down those three warbands, Sons of Velmorn, Dread Pageant, and Thundrick, and kind of give a current state of play with their Nemesis decks. Because they are, again, a lot of fun. Maybe not top tier, but a lot of fun. Other than that, I took Loon Court out for a spin. And if you've been sleeping on Loon Court, don't sleep on them. Like, they are super fun. And when I say super fun for Jason, I think what the listeners need to understand is it makes my brain hurt. So it is very important that you pick the quests when they go on and what you're doing, and you hedge your bets to do those quests. But man, it was a great puzzle, and they play very, very well. To the point where
they allow you to cheat too. Yeah,
you get all the objectives in your hand. I mean, Justin, one of our local players, found a rule like, hey, I always knew that you could draw up if quests were out. I didn't realize you could draw up if you just scored a normal surge, and sure could. He got like 5 or 6 objectives in his hand. It's awesome. And I say don't sleep on them because I played the winner of our tournament, which I'll let Jerod get into that, but I played that person with the same winning deck and the same winning warband into Loon Court, and it was an awesome matchup, and I was able to take the game. So they can play, although they haven't been being played, and I look forward to getting them on the table more. I am totally immersed in the Lion novel. I think it's
it's so good. I cannot wait for you to finish it.
It is so good, and no spoilers, but we're kind of like to a battle, and I think I got probably an hour and a half, 2 hours left to go on the audiobook. And it's so good that I probably actually listen to it again, which I never do. I think that the writer did such a great job at bringing the Lion back to life and kind of bringing him to life, as he still is a Primarch, but there is internal struggle with him. It kind of, I don't want to say wraps all the storyline up, but it just is a different approach that I never would have speculated that they would have taken. So it is an awesome book. Super enjoying it. Can't wait to get my model back from Danny. So Danny is currently painting my lion. And speaking of Danny, there are something like 9 days left in the Spring Nova Charitable Foundation. And Danny does have a model up for auction on that. So by the time this is published, there's probably like 4 or 5 days left. So get on over there and throw some dollars at Danny's wonderful painted chaplain. And then I assembled Mortal Hulk for MCP. And I went out and I bought a bunch of 40K stuff because when I get the bug, I get the bug. So I have that new Dreadnought. I assembled a limited edition Blade Guard Lieutenant, and I kind of made them Dark Angel-esque because that is my plan. I will try the new 40K, and if the new 40K is fantastic, then I will pivot and start collecting Dark Angels again because I still have my full Ravenwing, and Dark Angels are my favorite. And now that the line is here, I should be risen as well. And that was a whole lot. And I think right now, now I'm putting the new box together, and I already have this Heffalump figure ready to go. The Heffalump. He's fantastic and a super cool model. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to a couple Mondays from tonight to get all this stuff on. Oh, Beastbound Assault, that finally arrived. Woohoo! Arrived today.
So exciting.
Yeah, it arrived today in the States, and my one that I ordered from overseas arrived today as well. So we are all set, ready to go. Can't wait to get the pirate on the table. Let's go. Jerod, do you have as much hobby progress?
I have a decent
He's
amount
got
of
a pretty chunk. Yeah.
hobby progress since the last time I recorded. So I just looked it up. It has been so we are recording. It is May 6th. Our last episode dropped March 6th. So it has been 2 months since we dropped an episode.
So sorry for that.
Yep.
Way to
I'm
go,
not
Sleeks
sorry.
Bowl.
Yeah. So hobby progress wise, I have painted Psylocke and Emma Frost.
You painted Emma? What?
Not your daughter, Emma. Emma Frost.
Okay.
For Marvel Crisis Protocol, and I also painted Logan the Wolverine and Apex Predator Sabretooth for Marvel Crisis Protocol. I did a huge purge. I got rid of a ton of backlog old models, stuff on sprues, stuff not on sprues, stuff primed, stuff painted. And then from the funds from that, I purchased the Eldari Combat Patrol, and I have since painted the Guardian Defenders and the weapon platform from that. And then I have a pretty hard hobby goal to finish May out, to finish building and painting that that Combat Patrol up. Also in preparation of 10th edition of Warhammer 40k. I at least enjoy painting, unlike Jason. So if nothing else, I will have some well-painted or reasonably well-painted Eldari models to sit in my cabinet next to my Yvrain and Yinkarn and Visarch. If nothing else. And then, have missed some meetups lately because life changes. My son is swimming a lot more now, and that puts a little hiccup on my ability to get out of the house in the evenings. But I was able to make it out to the tournament. I took Sons of Elmorn with Fearsome Fortress and had a lot of fun and some reasonable success, but not as much success as I would have liked. So my first game was against Exile Dead, and those just went resoundingly in my favor. Was able to just keep away from the zombies and take targets of opportunity when I could, and then had a super sweet 2 activations with the fourth and last Thane, I believe is his name, with his scything attack. In one activation, I killed 2 zombies, and then in the next activation, I killed 3 zombies. So 5 fighters dead in 2 activations. It's hard to come back from that.
It's a pretty big glory swing.
Yep. So that was round 1, and then you all heard about round 2, and then round 3 round tournament. I went up against our buddy Jake's Steelhearts champions with Fearsome Fortress as well, and I will tell you that the Sons of Elmorn are not big fans of fighters that can hit for 3 damage and have cleave. So I took the first game 11-6. With the second game, Jake blew me out 5-18. And then the final game ended on a failed attack on my part to kill Oberyn, which cost me the game. And the final game ended at 7-8. So, and it would have swung. Oberyn was large at that point, and I had siege breakers. So it would have been a 4 glory swing if that one attack had gone through to push it to 11-8. But that didn't happen. So Jake took the day with his Steelhearts champions with Fearsome Fortress. But as you heard from Jason, that is obviously not an invincible deck because Grincrack's Looncourt cracked that nut. All of that to say, I think that the game is actually in a pretty good state. I think it's in a lot better state than maybe I would have said prior to that tournament and then prior to hearing about the meetup last week. So I think that covers everything that I've been up to.
Yeah, I'll just echo the game being in a fun state. Like, there's definitely some warbands that shine, right? And we are very fortunate in our play group that everyone kind of diversifies and plays just what's interesting. But I also think that there's like raw stats. There are probably like 4 or 5 warbands that just stand out above, but that doesn't mean that the other warbands can't keep up, right? And that's why I really wanted to play Dread Pageant and like just do something that's kind of mid tier. And I played them a lot this last month and a half into a lot of matchups, and Some days it went well, and some days it didn't. But overall, it was fun every time.
Sweet. So we do want to talk about the new warbands, but I think before we get into that, it's probably worth mentioning that there were a lot of updates to the Gnarlwood or to the Underworld's rule set in the Wyrdhollow rulebook. And we're not going to cover all of those. Our friends over at the What the Hex cast did a really good job of covering that. But I was wondering if anybody had anything about the Wyrdhollow release, the rule set, the warbands outside of our review that kind of stood out, any of the changes that really jumped out.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest, I don't want to say change, but just one of the coolest things that we're going, we'll talk about it when we get into the warbands, but the fact that we have non-wizard casters. Mm-hmm. So, the demons all have a spell attack action that is a spell, and they can cast it, but they are not wizards. They don't have the wizard keyword, which is really interesting when you read the rules, and we've never had this, because when they roll 2 crits on that casting roll, they don't take backlash because they're not wizards. And it's just really, it's different and cool, and I'm very happy because could you imagine Eyes of the Nine way back in the day actually getting spell attack actions, but not being wizards? That would have been awesome for that warband, and I'm glad we're seeing it now.
Yeah, like if Narvia and Turush had spell
attacks
actions
instead of
not been
regular.
wizards. Because Trace in Age of Sigmar, right? The Arcanites, the Zinch Arcanites, that's what Narvia
they cast
and Turush
spells.
are, and they can cast spells, right? They count as wizards.
Yep.
And
Chiric Acolytes have spells on their war scroll. So yes, you're 100% correct.
So that's cool.
It's a nice balancing thing because you don't have to worry about this one warband with what would be 5 casters becoming so powerful when it comes to wizards or casting. Like, no, like now they can still have a spell attack action that counts as a spell, but they're not casting any of the gambit stuff, or they're not getting any wizard upgrades. So again, not a full rule change because it's kind of been there the whole time, but it's never been on a card. So I like that.
Yeah. And I like the theme of it too, right? Like these are Zinch, like full on Zinch demons, not
they're like coalesced.
Yeah. So like, of course they're more in tune with the winds of magic and are less likely to damage themselves from casting spells. I think for me, and I mean, this has been teased on, I mean, it wasn't teased, it was like laid out on the Warhammer community, is I am so far on paper a big fan of the salvage mechanic, because I think it opens up the opportunity to include in a Nemesis playstyle or Rivals playstyle, fighter specific cards or role specific cards that aren't just going to brick your deck when that fighter dies. And so, like, I mean, for me, I'm curious to see how it's going to play out, but I'm pretty excited on paper and pretty positive in my attitude about it on paper, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Just not having to worry as much about having those in your hand is a big boon. And then one thing that I really love about this particular box is that we've circled back, and now we have all these different spells for these other warbands that we've had to now make them a little more relevant and bring them back in. So any warband that has a wizard in it, like you can now look at these and be like, oh, this, the Seismic Shock deck in particular, like you can look at that and be like, this is really cool. I can lean into this play style different. So like, that's one of my favorite things about the box too, is just coming back to Magic a little bit, which we've not seen in a while.
Yeah. And then, so there's actually one more thing, and I'm surprised that Jason didn't call it out. So Jason, have you looked at the glory tokens closely from the Wyrdhollow box?
I have not.
No. So you know how like we're in, so if we go back to Shadespire and Night Vault, like the kind of color palette around the glory tokens was that like kind of grayish blue, grayish, greenish, bluish, right? And then we moved into Beastgraven Dire Chasm, and it was very brown, very earthy. And then we were in Nethermaze and Harrow Deep, and it was very blue.
Right now.
So I'm waiting. I'm watching him on live. Yeah. So tell me, Jason. So around the glory tokens, what you got? Maybe I'm colorblind.
They're almost like a snare hex behind.
Yeah, but what color is it?
It's purple.
It's purple. Jason's favorite.
Cool. It is my favorite.
Yeah. I like it. I was not going to punch the glory tokens out because, of course, I have like a billion already punched out. But I'm like, oh, they're purple. Like, that's so cool.
That is really cool. I never noticed that. And two, speaking of tokens, the new OP kit looks to have acrylic glory tokens in it. So
maybe those will be purple.
Oh,
maybe
that would be sweet. Cool. Anything else? As everybody looks at their boards and tokens,
makes good radio.
It makes for good radio. Yeah, we'll all just go silent and read the rule book. And
I think just to give you one more point on that salvage too. I think it is big. I don't know how it'll work out in Championship, but for Nemesis, I've already started building decks with 11 and 11 because if I have a spell or an upgrade, what is it? It's not going to hurt my hand. Like if I lost my wizard. So
yeah, that reminds me of playing in Shadespire when there were like 3 different card draw gambits available. So you were like, sure, I'll run 12 and 12. Nice. Good shout. Cool. Well, I think that wraps up what we've been up to and our briefest of overviews of the new changes coming from Wyrdhollow. So we'll take a break here, and when we come back, we will talk about Domitan's Darmatarn, Domitan's Stormcoven, and Ephilim's Pandaemonium. And we're back, and we are going to dive into the Wyrdhollow, and we're going to go through the 2 new warbands, give our regular review. So for anyone that hasn't listened to any of our reviews, we kind of start from a Rivals stance. And what we're looking for is we'll give a brief overview of the fighters, but at this point, everybody should have the fighter cards in their hands. The images are in our blog at blog.battle-mallet.com, and those images are courtesy of Warhammer Community. So you can go to the Warhammer Community site, see the same images on the blog articles that kind of preview the warbands themselves. But what we're going to focus in on are key cards that you want to see early in the game. So your first 3 objectives, your first 3 gambits, your first 3 upgrades. What do you want to see early? What do we think is going to be the most helpful as you're playing this warband early? We'll cover playstyle. We'll cover maybe what boards you want to choose. We'll cover what you want to be looking at if you're sitting across the table from this warband, and then we'll give it our rating. And now that Nemesis is a thing, we give a Rivals rating. So what does it look like to just play this warband with these cards? And then what does it look like to play it in a Nemesis format? What decks do you think would pair well with it? So now that we have covered all of the logistics, we'll jump into Domitan Stormcoven. So Domitan Stormcoven, another 3-fighter Stormcast Eternal Wizard warband. So it's the Stormsires, Cursebreakers all over again. They have some interesting mechanics here in that you're only ever going to inspire 1 fighter at a time. So they have a harness the ether mechanic. So after another fighter's activation, inspire this fighter and then uninspire all other fighters. What is cool about the fighters is they're actually all pretty formidable without inspiring, but they get even better when they do inspire. So you have Domitan, Eye of the Storm. He is, I think, the de jure leader of the warband. I think lore-wise, he is the leader. But another interesting thing about this warband is that whenever they inspire, that fighter is the leader. They have the leader symbol, and therefore, like any leader keyword cards would trigger off of that fighter, the inspired fighter. So when you first start the game, none of your fighters are inspired. You do not have a leader. Just interesting, worthy of note. Domitan gets cleave on both of his attacks when he inspires, and he has a super accurate cast, which is pretty nice. And then he's got an ether shock reaction. So when he is inspired, after he inspires, you can stagger each enemy within 2 hexes of this fighter. So that's going to be great for setting up, further attacks, or, if you're in a situation where somebody might want to delve, you can stagger them and prevent them from delving. You can remove guard tokens, all of the fun things that stagger can do. So next on the list is Sarpon the Cyclone. So just the next fighter down on the list, more accurate melee attack. So 3 smash. That goes to 3 damage when Sarpon is inspired if the target is adjacent. And Sarpon has the Ether Force reaction. So when Sarpon inspires, you can choose one friendly fighter and push the chosen fighter 1 hex. So extra pushes there. And then last but certainly not least is Liana Stratosi, who is move 4. The other fighters are move 3. And when she inspires, she gives +1 move to all of the friendly fighters, and all other friendly fighters gain the flying trait. She starts with the flying trait. So that's kind of a basic rundown. I will say that all of the fighters in this warband are level 1 wizards when they're uninspired. They inspire to be level 2 wizards. They all have a range 2 attack that is on smashes, so like a physical attack, I guess you would call it. And then they all have a cast like a ranged spell attack action as well. So yeah, we don't want to just straight read the fighter cards because you have them. But anything either of you feel like I missed?
No, I don't think so.
Quick rambles.
No, I think you covered it, but I mean, we can get into more depth when it comes to like how do they play, right? So
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and we should, because I think there is a lot there, a lot to unpack. So that covers the fighters generally. So the next thing we want to do is pick out those top 3 objectives that you want to see when you are playing this warband. So I'm going to kick things to who looks the most nervous on the camera, Trace.
Hey, this warband likes to inspire and can do it really easy. So I am picking Channel the Storm. Score this immediately after the second or subsequent friendly fighter became inspired in the same round. So all you have to do is react with 2 separate fighters, and inspire both of them, and you can score this card. Or I think there's also a ploy that allows you to switch one.
There is a ploy.
So yeah, which I think we will talk about in a minute.
Well, I think we will. Gosh, a little foreshadowing there. So, yeah, and so this is a surge. So, it's going to score. And then, one thing about having a 3-fighter warband is that the chances of having 2 fighters alive gets lower and lower as you go further and further into the game. And so inspiring 2 fighters 3rd round may not even be possible. So,
so having this card early is good.
It's definitely better. Jason, what else do we want?
I'm going with Tempest Fury because this is like easy surge. Make 3. I'm going to summarize. Make 3 move actions by a friendly fighter in the same phase. So if you move someone 3 times or combination of 3 different people 3 times in the same phase, score a glory.
Easy peasy.
I think I got this one.
Yeah. Charge. Move the same fighter 3 times. Who cares?
Or barge.
Or barge. That's right.
Barging all the way.
Barging in. Sweet. Yeah, and so that's so it's another surge. So it helps get the train running. And then the last one that we want to cover. So there was a little bit of debate around maybe what end phase we wanted to include. We ultimately settled on Fulminating Bulwark. So this is scoring an end phase. It's a duel. 2 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to each other, and each of those fighters is within 2 hexes of enemy territory, which Jason kindly pointed out in the pre-show is within 1 hex of no one's territory. 2 hexes of enemy territory, 1 hex of no one's territory. So, kind of on the front line, but you're not having to fully commit into your enemy's territory. And we like it early, again, because you need 2 fighters. And, if you draw this in the 3rd round and you only have 1 fighter alive, that's not so good. Yeah. So.
And what do you have to do to get there, Jerod?
What do you mean? What do you have to do to get there?
You have to move. So Scoring Tempest
you
Fury
do
on
have
the
to
way.
move.
Yeah.
Unless actually
Unless
there is
you
a
have a-
board. There
there
are a
is a
couple.
board
There
that
is a
has-
board that
yeah.
has 2 starting hexes adjacent to each other within that could presumably be within 1 hex of no one's territory. But
They
more than
could.
likely, you're right, Trace. You're gonna have
Yeah.
to move.
Yeah.
Well, you want to move 3 times anyway, so it's fine.
That's right. Yeah, it's
Right.
great. It's beautiful. Just have them literally switch places.
Yeah, and before we get off the objectives, there is one objective that has caused a lot of chatter, and that's Eye of the Hurricane. Like score, it's a duel, so you score this in end phase. The same friendly fighter made 4 or more different actions in the preceding action phase, and that fighter is in no one's territory or enemy territory. And we did get a ruling for Train Them Up that basically ruled that a charge is not an action. Like it like you count the move and the attack action in a charge, not the charge itself. So this one is not as straightforward to score, right? Because you're going to have to like go on guard. You may have to barge, which is a move in a stun action, and then make an attack action. So to score that with the same fighter, that's a lot of activations for 2 glory. But hey, it's 2 glory.
I mean, it could be 3rd round, and you only have 1 fighter left alive anyway. So
that's right. Cool.
All right, so gambits. Jason.
Gambits. Well, I mean, Trace kind of foreshadowed this, right? So we'll just go past
hint.
Pass the mantle. Choose a friendly fighter. The chosen fighter is inspired. Then uninspire each other friendly fighter. We have not seen a Gambit inspire in a long time. Like, and these used to be extremely powerful. It's a little bit tempered in this warband because you can kind of inspire when you want or who you want anyway. But this is really cool. 1, to help score the objective, and 2, because of the way that their stats change, 2 of them going to 2 block when they're inspired, and the other one getting 5 wounds when he's inspired. So if you're sitting before your opponent's activation and you know who they're going to attack, you can kind of buff your person up to survive.
Yep. I like it. Well, Trace, since Jason stole the mantle.
Oh, it's fine. I passed it to him. It's fine. It's
back
fine.
To you to pick the next gambit.
I'm going to remain positive about this, and I'm going to talk about positive charge. So this is a ploy that is kind of rare these days, where you just get like a nice flat +1 to your dice. So this is +1 dice to the first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation step. In addition, +1 move to the first charge super action made by an inspired friendly fighter in the next activation step. So you can get some folks up to potentially move 5, depending on who is inspired. Plus your +1 dice for first range 1, range 2. All of them have a pretty stout range 2 attack action. Domitan in particular is pretty tasty because he has a range 2 smash 3 damage with cleave. So you're looking at 3 smash with cleave.
Yep.
Which is pretty accurate if you're going up against somebody who has blocks like Sons of Elmorn, for example.
Yeah.
So just having a nice +1 dice card is a nice thing to have in your back pocket, especially on turn 1. But yeah, so pretty straightforward.
Nice.
Jerod.
Yeah, so the last gambit, it's a gambit spell. This is Lightning Tether, and this is a reaction. So play this after this fighter's successful spell attack action after the drawback step. If cast, deal 1 damage to each enemy fighter adjacent to the target. So this gives you a way to plink, and depending on the warband that you're going up against, this it looks like going into Zarbag's Gits. So there's 9 fighters on the board. There's a really good chance you'll probably be able to draw back into 1 or 2 in that situation. So it just gives you a way to get, some extra damage going on around the board. And then the other thing that it does is it gives you a reaction that's a spell. So, you're not having to, spend stuff in the power step to do that.
And although we didn't
cast off.
pick the objectives, there's several objectives in here that want you to cast some spells. So
Yep. Yes. Yep. So that takes care of Gambit. So we'll move on to the upgrades, and we were not in total alignment when it came to the upgrades. So we've actually got 4 that we're going to go through. I'm going to start things off with Scrolls of the Spellseeker, which is, I don't know, maybe it might be one of the best upgrades for a wizard that we've seen. So this is when this fighter attempts to cast a spell, change each symbol in the casting value of that spell to channel. So that's the one that appears 3 times on the magic die. And so crits are also successes. So you have a 2/3 chance to roll a success when your casting value is a channel. And so based on everything that I understand and the way that it was played on the Warhammer TV battle report, this also applies to attack actions. So now your spellcasting attack actions are that much more accurate. And I don't think it's a situation that exists now, but I know that in the past there have been Gambit spells that were cast on a crit. So in the rare instance where you get that magical wombo combo out, if that ever happens again, now you have something that could be really powerful that's now super easy to cast. But again, there are objectives in here that require you to cast spells. This card is going to make that much easier. Jason, what else do we want?
Sorry, I was just fully digesting what you just said because I misread that card. And that is
Nice.
really, really, really good. Very specifically, well, I'll after we go through this, I'll talk about it. So anyway, my pick for upgrades is Herald of the Storm, which is just a flat +1 move. And, so the +1 move, because you have 2 fighters that only move 3, and that's always been kind of something that Stormcast have to fight through, is they don't have really high move. Well, in this warband, Trace already laid out a positive charge, which could give you an additional move. They do have a fighter that is 4 move, and then when that fighter is inspired, they give an additional move. So, this warband, even though it's 3 fighters and baseline 3 move, can kind of get around the board with some upgrades and inspires and gambits. But then the other part of this is a reaction after activation step in which this fighter made a successful spell attack action. Remove one of this fighter's charge tokens, then give this fighter 1 move token. This can be really, really, really good in any point of the game because you're charging, which would normally lock that fighter down, but then you're taking a move, which you can then turret up and cast your spell. But late game, this is really kind of game changing. If you're down to 1 fighter, you can charge and then still activate and still move around the board. Yeah, you're risking it because it has to be successful, but just the versatility of that reaction is really awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's cool. Trace?
So I'm going to talk about one that really caught my eye because us being the grognards of Warhammer Underworlds at this point, having played since the very beginning, there's a upgrade in this deck called Master of Ancient Lore. And for those who've been playing for a while, there used to be a ploy that you could play called Duel of Wits, which allowed you to draw a power card when your opponent played a power card or played a gambit. Draw 2, yeah. So this card says, reaction. Use this after an opponent plays a power card. Draw 1 power card. What? So if somebody plays an upgrade, draw a card. If somebody plays a ploy gambit, draw a card. If they play a spell, you draw 2 cards.
Yep.
It can only be used once per round, so it's not like you're just drawing continuously, but still, once per power phase, you draw a card.
Yeah.
Just amazing to keep your hand full of power cards, which especially if you want to start casting spells and stuff.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, just having that many power cards is amazing.
Yeah, which and the fact that it's once per round makes this really valuable early, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So I think that's why it kicks up. And so then the last one that we want to talk about is the Liber Fulminus. +1 range to this fighter's range 2+ spell attack actions. So now they're all sitting on a range 4 spell attack action, which is pretty tasty. It just extends their reach. It may mean that you're going to get an attack off without having to charge, and then you could further go in and charge to make that second attack or subsequent attack. So just extra utility for the warband, to be sure.
Yeah. So before we go on, I just want to talk about that Master of Ancient Lore one more time. So yes. When you're doing your mulligan, I would even say if you really want, you could even think about mulliganing your hand if this is not in there, just to get it in your hand first round.
Yeah.
Because you're going to make up for all those other cards you might have shuffled back into your deck. So it's just something to think about, like, especially with this particular warband. And if you're going to try and cast spells, like you want to get those spells in your hand. So and that's just something I've been thinking about since I read this card was, do I mulligan just to try and get this card in my hand, regardless of what my first hand of cards is?
Yeah. Cause if you don't draw, like, take the action to draw a power card during the game, you're only going to see 15 of your cards, right?
Yep.
And this card being played in round 1, most likely, because your opponent may not play any power cards, but that's highly unlikely. Most likely you're going to see 18, which is
right,
which is great. And then on top of that, you're a 3-fighter warband, so your first action maybe is drawing a power card. And I say maybe because normally in a 3-fighter warband, my 100% recommendation is your first activation, always draw a power card. This one, maybe not, because I may want to get somebody inspired. So I may go on guard my first activation to inspire somebody. So,
Yep. That's good advice.
Yep.
I like it. And especially if you know that your opponent is going to be casting spells.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because then you get a draw 2, which is really good.
Yeah.
Yes. And then
sweet.
I just want to so I had a thought about Scrolls of the Spell Seeker, and it really just comes down to this may be the first time that our audience is seeing spell casting in the gambit and kind of in that power step. So the one thing that I just want to kind of point out there is, like, yes, we've all seen plink damage, but the way that these cards kind of work and the reason they were so powerful before is you're dealing a lot of damage in the power step. And given the other deck that we'll talk about later, there's, I think, 5 or 6 ways to damage your opponent, not just plink, but on casting. So typically when you're casting, you're working towards other objectives, and there's a lot of synergies that go with that. So you burn through gambits a lot more. So just further compound what Trace was talking about, you want gambits in your hand because they can go quickly. So on to boards.
Jerod,
what board do we want?
Yeah, so something with midfield deployment. So, you don't want to be right up on the front because you do only have 3 fighters, and you don't want them to be able to focus down who you want, but you also don't want to hang in the back. So their deck requires some push into enemy territory or towards the middle. So you don't want to be late to the game in that regard. So something in the midfield so that you can control when you push into enemy territory. So with that in mind, Jason, what are you going to call their play style?
So their play style is aggro, like a flex aggro hold. And really when it comes to them, it's leveraging the fighter's stats, which goes without saying, like, that's just obvious. But given the inspire, you really have to go back and forth in who is the best tool or best fighter for the job. We already went over that one of them gives a +1 move to friendly fighters when they're inspired. So maybe it's getting someone across. But Domitan and the Cyclone, they go, if you're adjacent to people, like the Cyclone can do 3 damage on 3 hammers.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Domitan goes to 3 damage. So if you're going up against, with cleave, if you're going up against elite warband, you may want them to kind of like lead the way and do your heavy lifting. The other thing is leveraging that the 2 block, or Domitan going to 5 wounds. So it really is like this flex aggro. Their objectives are going to put you on objectives in enemy territory. That's where they want to be. But really, I would say that this warband fights for the center line. Like they are a midfield scrappy warband that can still plink damage because they have range 3 casting and very accurate range 3 casting.
Yep.
Especially with scrolls.
Especially with scrolls of the Spellseeker.
So what's their new player rating, Trace?
Well, no, we're not there yet.
No?
Whoa.
Oh.
No, we got to talk about what we want to do if you sit down across from them. So
Win.
Trace,
all you want to do is win.
No matter what.
Win. No matter what.
So when you're playing against this warband, because only one of them can be inspired at a time, when they're inspired, they are 2 shields, but when they're not inspired, they're at 1 shield. So their defenses drop pretty significantly. So I would focus down one at a time. Just really try and hammer down on one. And then also you don't want them to be on objectives in your territory. So try and push them off, and while you're doing that, just try and really focus fire one of those fighters at a time. They have 4 wounds, or Domitan has 5, and he remains a single shield on his inspired side.
Yeah.
So that's just something to take note of. So just focus fire is really the biggest thing.
Seems good.
Okay, now Jerod, new player rating.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to call this a silver plus. It's hard to give a 3-fighter warband a full gold, just because I think there's a lot of nuance in making sure that you're making the most of your activations with 3 fighters. You called out before that, like, often a good first action is to draw a card, and I think that's something that gets forgotten when you have 3 fighters. You want to go. But even in that case, especially with this warband where their objective deck wants them to be on objectives in enemy territory, if you're at the end of the game and you only have 2 fighters left, now you have to be really careful about your positioning and making sure that you're timing getting onto those objectives, in the right way. And then in that same vein, like, the deck wants you to be in enemy territory, which is not a safe place to be. I mean, even if you are 4 wounds on 2 block, not all of your fighters are going to be on 2 block. As we've discussed. So, so between being smart with your activations and then managing that inspiration, I don't think it's quite straightforward enough to give it a gold. It's not your Gnarl Spirit pack or your Grisel's Aranai, where the play style is just very straightforward. It's going to be easy to pick up the deck and the warband and just have success with it. So, Jason, what are we pairing this with in the Nemesis format?
Well, the beauty of the Nemesis format and the Rivals Universal decks that have come out is they're all pretty good, right? So you can make an argument for almost anything. But I think our top 3 would be obviously Seismic Shock. It came out in this set. It's heavily focused on casters. You have 3 wizards in this warband. So that one seems like the no-brainer. We talked about them fighting in the midline, and we found that Fearsome Fortress, at least in our local meta, is kind of the choice here lately. Like, a lot of people are playing that, and it is geared around fighting that midline and fighting for no one's territories. And then Daring Delvers, and that's the one that I'm actually the most curious to play with, because I think it matches the way they want to play, of getting in enemy territory, getting on objectives in enemy territory. Plus, it gives me even more plink damage to go go after and do some damage. So although I haven't built a Daring Delvers Stormcoven deck yet, it's coming.
Sweet. Cool. Well, that's going to cover Domitan Stormcoven. So at this point, we're not going to take a break. I'm just going to pass the virtual microphone to Jason.
You're going to pass the mantle?
I'm going to pass the mantle. Yes.
Okay.
As Jason looks wistfully at his Ephilim model.
So yes, we've affectionately named this warband the Ephilim's Pandaemonium. It's Pandaemonium. Fandemonium. It is Pandemonium.
Heffalump as in his woozles.
Yep.
Woozles and weasels. Just like Eyes of the Nine was Lord Voldemort.
He says, yes. I forgot.
and Exile Dead is the dentist.
The dentist.
So
Daintalos, the dentist.
The Ephilim is here to stay. That's what we'll refer to. But very interesting warband. And I think before we can even get into this warband, it is 5 fighters. There is a leader, and then there are 4 changers. And this warband has a plot card. So at the start of the round, after the roll off, play through the change sequence, because this is called the change sequence. So the change sequence first follow the pillars. Anyway, if there's more than one, you kind of rotate around, and you cannot make any reactions to this. So it's kind of like out of step. So your first one is you choose one of your friendly changers and inspire the chosen changer. You choose. You can choose an inspired changer, so you can kind of skip through if you want to. But bam, one of your 4 changers is inspired right away.
Amazing.
It is like, thank you. Why didn't I have a choice? It's amazing. Spawn Maw. Then the second one.
I agree. Yeah.
Choose one friendly changer that has not been chosen this round. Stagger that chosen fighter, and I think that is really cool. But you're getting a huge bonus for inspiring somebody, and now someone's taking a stagger counter. So you better pick somebody in back, otherwise your enemy is going to beat up on that changer. Number 3, choose a friendly changer that has not been chosen this round. Give the chosen changer 1 guard token.
Very nice.
This is very nice because they're the dodge fighters, so now they're getting on guard, and if they're inspired and you're kind of going through this, they're all on 2 dodge. So ooh, ouch, great, good, grand, wonderful. And then the 4th one, if you have 4 alive, and this is after the first round you're doing it, choose that changer, push the chosen changer 1 hex. A free push?
Yep.
Who? What? Where? What? Oh my goodness gracious. So I'm inspiring. Yeah, I'm taking a stagger, but I'm taking a guard, and I'm pushing. I'm in love already. I get a free push every round.
Jason's happy.
Well, every round that I have 4 changers alive.
Yep.
So, because you would go down, and if you only have 3, you don't get to the 4th one.
No.
But then other than that, we have the leader, the Heffalump himself or herself.
Himself.
Well,
I will say that the Warhammer community has been very clear. The writing in the battle report, Ephilim is a they.
Okay, they selves.
I mean, which makes sense. There's probably multiple personalities crocked in there anyway.
Heffalump, and I will just say, and that's kind of why we've been snickering through this episode.
Amorphous spider person.
Yes,
I put this model together, and it is even greater and more awesome in person. I just keep looking at it for all the things. But anyway, the big thing to note here there's 2 things. So there are 3 things actually. The leader inspires if 2 or more surviving friendly fighters are inspired, and they have a range 4 spell attack action for 2 damage on focus. Or I'm sorry, on focus. On focus.
It's focuses, foci.
So they could be range or level 2 wizard right off the bat if they have 2 changers within 3 hexes. of them. When they inspire, they go to a level 2 wizard, still carrying that range 4. So just huge distance on this fighter. Then we talked about the Spawn Maw. That fighter is move 5. Sorry, move 5, 3 Fury, uninspired. But then if you choose to inspire that person, they're 2 dodge, range 5. The attack is 3 hammers for 2 damage, and it has chomp. So if you're attacking a large fighter, it's doing 3 damage. That's fantastic. Great movement, great defense, great attack. Oh, and yes, also has a spell attack action. Right? Uninspired, it's on 2 focus for damage. Inspired, it's on 3 focus for damage. And who cares if it's three dice? Because you're not going to take backlash. Great.
Nope.
Then you got the flame spooler, the bird. Again, it's inspiring through the changer thing, or when all other friendly fighters are inspired. The keynote here is it has a reaction called Warp Splash. After the deal damage step of this attack action, give each fighter within 1 hex of the target 1 warping counter. At the start of the round, deal 1 damage to each fighter with 1 or more warping counters, then remove that fighter's warping counter. Now, it's going on anything that's adjacent. Doesn't say enemy, right?
No, it says each fighter within 1 hex of the target.
Yeah.
Which includes itself, the target. So not adjacent. Not just adjacent, I should say.
But I'm saying it can go on friendly or enemy.
Yes.
It is only 1 damage, this attack. It's range 3, but you are putting a token, and to my knowledge, there's no way to get these tokens off of them. So you're going to take a damage the start of the round. So that's a 2 damage attack that splashes on anything that's around it. That's fantastic. Kindlefinger. The cool thing with this one is it's -1 damage from attack actions in this fighter, so it's a 2-wound fighter that is really a 3-wound fighter.
Yeah, or 4 if you're hitting it with 2 damage attacks.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's a lot more resilient than he looks.
Yes. Because it starts at 2 dodge.
Yeah.
And then the other thing here is it once again has warp finger or warp flames, warp fingers. +1 damage if you are adjacent to the target when you attack them. And last but not least is the starfish. The starfish.
Starfish.
It's a starfish. Star, stop, fish. Starfish.
Okay.
It is a starfish, but I call it a starfish because it's amazing. And the big one here is if it has no move or charge tokens, it gets +1 damage. So if it's just standing there and slaps at people, it could be 3 damage right off the get-go. And then it has, after the last power step in a round, choose 1 enemy fighter. Push the chosen fighter up to 2 hexes. After that push, the chosen fighter must be adjacent to this fighter. So, you want to be on that objective? I don't think so. I'm just going to pull you right into my starfish. And maybe
it's lovely.
So that's the warband. It's fantastic. A lot of plot, a lot of different things. There's a lot of nuance here. But let's move on to the objectives. Trace, what do you got for our first objective?
So I heard you like spells. This whole box is about them. So, with the exception of 1 Rivals deck. So, we're going to go with Arcane Mastery. Surge, score this immediately after the second or subsequent spell cast by a friendly fighter in the same phase. We've noted that there are several spell attacks that aren't necessarily by a wizard. So this doesn't say anything about a wizard. It just says second or subsequent spell attack action or spell cast, just full stop. So this could be any of the minions. It could be Ephilim himself from range 4 from downtown. It's just a really easy spell oh my gosh, really an easy objective to score because
there you go.
There's lots of spells.
Through it.
There's lots of spells. So, yeah.
Jerod, what do you have?
Callous Manipulator.
So callous.
Heffalump is callous. So this is a surge hybrid. Score this immediately after an activation step or power step if a friendly changer was taken out of action in that step. So if a changer gets taken out of action by a gambit or by an attack, hooray, you're net 1/1 on the glory, right? Or 2 or more friendly changers are staggered. So this could happen at the very beginning of turn 2 because you're going to go through the change sequence.
Well, stagger tokens come off, so someone would have to be staggered.
Yeah.
But
fair.
Yeah.
But there are stagger hexes in the game now, so you could just move.
So you just move into one.
Wait, what? No way. No one would ever do that.
Yes. Right? I would to score this objective.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah. Especially if you move them backwards, right?
Right.
Just run away. Anyway.
And the last objective is Scornful Stance. Score this in the end phase if a friendly leader is holding an objective. Don't care where that objective is, just be holding it in the end phase, and you're going to get another glory. And that is a great start to some very passive scoring.
Yes, it is.
It is. So moving right into the upgrades.
Skip the gambits.
Moving right into the gambits.
It's late, y'all. It's late. We're sorry.
It's late.
Moving right into the gambits. Bolt of Tzeentch. So this is a gambit spell. If cast, choose an enemy fighter within 4 of the caster, deal 1 damage to and stagger the chosen fighter. This is what I was talking about earlier, like just plink damage. Oh yeah, and by the way, you're going to take a stagger counter, and I can do this right before my activation. So now one of my other guys can kind of come in and clean up and get a reroll on the attack.
That's beautiful.
Jerod, what about another gambit?
Latching Tendrils. So this is a gambit ploy. Choose one enemy fighter, push the chosen fighter up to 2 hexes so they are adjacent to 1 or more friendly changers. What's up, Starfish?
Apatrax likey.
With your extra damage.
What's the last
when you
one,
don't have
Trace?
a movement? I'm so tired. Go.
Just cut him off. Sudden warp portal. Choose 2 friendly fighters that are within 3 hexes of each other. Place each fighter in the hex that was occupied by the other fighter when you chose them. So this is just another way to manipulate the board to help you get, into range with the Starfish or with the Chompy Chomp. Just nice ways to flip your fighters around the board to get them into advantageous positions or to get fighters closer to certain objectives you may want to get on, so on and so forth.
I just love this one because Eyes of the Nine had a very similar card, but you can take the fighter, Inspire fighter, charge in, and then the other one that had the guard token, you can flip them in there next to them. So like it's such a versatile card.
You can also get the leader out of dodge.
Yeah,
there's lots of cool stuff.
Or put the leader into dodge, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, on to the upgrades. Staying with Trace. What upgrade you
got? Arch Sorcerer. So this is a upgrade that's restricted to Heffalump himself. You can reroll 1 dice in this fighter's casting rolls, which includes his spell attack. So you get a free reroll in every attack that you make with the spell attack, plus whatever spells you're trying to cast in your power phase. Real good. Rerolls are good. They've been good for forever. Keep using them.
All right, and the next upgrade, we're going to go with the Fires of Change. Holy guacamole. Range 4, 3 fury, 2 damage, and there's a reaction during this attack action after the deal damage step. For each fighter within 1 hex of the target, pick one. Deal 1 damage to that fighter or heal 1 that fighter. This card is restricted to a wizard, but it is amazing.
Are you within one of yourself, Jason?
Yes.
I wish I wasn't, but I am.
You are.
I am. So it's 3
a
damage.
3 damage attack with a 1 damage splash or heal.
It's so nuts.
Bananas. It's
That's
bananas.
That is rough.
Like the only thing that it's not a spell, so like it's not going to help you score some of the objectives.
Yeah.
But it's like 3 damage range for attack with supports.
Yep. I was going to say, yeah, you get supports.
It's crazy.
I mean, if you Bolt of Zinch something, ping a damage on it, and then you do this on the fighter next to it and do 3 damage to kill it, and then the other fighter was 2 damage, now you've killed 2 fighters with 1 action.
So I don't think if you take the fighter out of action with Fires of Change. Oh no, because you make the choice before the if the reaction takes them out of action, you make the choice before the out of action step. For each fighter within 1 hex of the target. Or you just do the target last.
No, this is after the deal damage step. So
so if Fires of Change kills them, then you don't get the splash. But if the ping reaction would kill them, then you just choose that fighter last.
But you're also not taking the fighter out with an attack action either.
Yeah, so it did,
Like there's some nuance there, but at the end of the day, 3
it's
damage,
still real
3
good.
damage at range
from
4. Yep.
It's got a built-in twist the knife, which is dumb.
Yep.
All right, Jerod,
do you know what else is dumb?
Bring us home.
Writhing Tentacles.
Writhing Tentacles is dumb.
They are dumb. So this upgrade, you cannot give this to a large fighter. Reaction, use this after an activation step or power step in which this fighter was dealt damage. Pick one, heal 1 this fighter, or push this fighter 1 hex. So, you just did a spell ping against Ephilim. Well, I guess I'm just going to heal 1. Tough.
Tough nuts.
Yep.
All right.
Or you can get Starfish into position to.
You can. I mean, you put on Kindle Finger, and he's super.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, what kind of board do we want, Trace?
Boards. You want something that has a nice central starting hex for Ephilim, because he doesn't want to be in the back. Like, he's not in the rear with the gear kind of leader. He does have range 4 on his attack, so he can still potentially touch the midline with some spells or get just across the midline with his spells. So you want him to be kind of midboard, but not in danger zone. So, find something that has. You also don't want your changers to be too far back or too far forward either, because some of them can get thumped pretty easy. So just find something with a nice concentration of fighters kind of in the middle of your side is what I would recommend. If don't be aggressive like an aggro board.
Sounds good. What kind of play style do they have, Jerod?
Yeah, so this is another flex, and it's hold aggro, but it's not necessarily hold all the way always in enemy territory. So they have the one that we mentioned, something stance. What is that? Scornful Stance. So that's in there. They have a surge that's a 2 surge for holding 3, and then they have a score 2 in the end phase if the objectives that you hold add up to 9. But none of those have the stipulation that you need to be in enemy territory, which is kind of nice. But then they also have some do damage and take things out of action, and I mean, it's a lot easier to win the game if you take out the enemy's fighters. So I think they dip into that aggro, but they're more on the hold side of flex than they are on the aggro side of flex.
Cool. And if I'm playing against myself, I'm just going to try to take out Ephilim. Like,
agreed.
I'm going to employ a Tigger because they're a wonderful thing. Take out that Ephilim.
I like it.
Just because and you do have to watch out for the spawn mob, because he can deal a lot of damage, is very accurate. But if you can take out that caster, a lot of the deck will start to wither away. New player rating. What do we want to give this as a new player rating?
Silver.
Yeah, I think it's a silver.
Why?
It's tricky. There's a lot of there's a lot of text on all of these cards to try and figure out how to employ correctly. But the deck's pretty straightforward. So like, it's just, there's some tricks in there that once you get your head around them, I think that, a good pilot will make these really scary, which I'm a little worried right now because Jason's got the glint in his eye about these. So we will see.
I love the plot card. I just think it's so cool. Yeah. So in Nemesis, I think it goes without saying, Seismic Shock, Fearsome Fortress. But in the pre-show trace, we called out Tooth and Claw. Why do you think that fits with this?
There's a lot of range 1 attack actions in here with the little Gribblies, and you can make them kind of scary. And you can also bring one back with Summoned Abomination, which is another ploy we didn't really talk about. It's a spell, so it leans into what you want to do anyway. You can sacrifice one of those dudes, go kill somebody with a 4 damage or a 5 damage attack. That's pretty accurate. And then they get killed. Woe is me, a demon got killed. And then you bring him back. So there's some cool stuff in there. I would be interested to put a deck together with that. I'm not saying it's a world beater, but there's a lot of cool ways to maneuver fighters around in that deck too, with being savage. And now that we have the stagger tokens on the boards marked, you can actually stagger a fighter, which would make them savage, right? Yep. So I mean, there's just cool little things that I think that you could, if you really wanted to go techie with it, you could potentially do it. I just think there's some interesting play there.
Yeah, some really, really good stuff, and this will be my warband. I'm very excited to kind of get it out there, and I've played enough Eyes in the Night. I think I deserve this one. I do think that they're going to, in Nemesis, I think they are going to kind of filter to the top tier. But the other ones that, the community says are kind of top tier, aggro warbands in Nemesis can kind of play into this, right? So it'd be very, very nice to see how it all filters out. And there's a little bit of hold and control in this warband, which really, really has me wanting to play. So with that, those are the 2 new warbands of the box. And we're going to take a break and be right back.
And we're back. And we're going to do some magic. And we're going to talk some more about some more magic and talk about Seismic Shock, because Seismic Shock is one of the new Rivals decks that's in this box. So
Seismic Shock's in this box.
So let's get into it. We don't have any fighter cards to talk about because this is a Rivals deck. Which is, you can use whatever fighters you want. Just make sure they're wizards, because this doesn't make any sense without a warband. It's not a wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Right. Do your best Haggard voice. You're a wizard, Harry. All right. So we'll get right into the objectives. So the whole goal of this...
Wait. This is a Rivals deck.
What?
Does it have a plot card?
It does not. So I'm going to give you the non-plot card description of what this deck does. You cast spells. You stand on objectives. Most of those things are going to be in enemy territory, probably.
Sweet.
So be aggressive and cast spells. That's the plot card, which doesn't exist.
That's 2 Rivals decks in a row that don't have a plot card.
Yeah.
Championship rejoice.
Yeah.
I know, right?
It's going to be bananas for those who still play that. Nothing against Championship. But for those who play Championship, this is... You have a lot of options here.
Yep.
So let's get into the objectives, boys. So let's start with Jason. Jason, why don't you pick our first objective for this?
I don't know if I can do that.
You can.
I can because I'm burnt out. So
I
just don't.
Well played.
It's a score. Duel. Score this immediately after a power step. If you have no power cards in your hand and you have not discarded any power cards in this round, cards that were played from your hand are not discarded. For 1 glory. Fantastic.
And just in case we missed it, the actual card's name is Burnt Out. It's not Burnt Out Jason. It is Burnt Out.
Yes.
Okay. Jerod, why don't you go next and I'll wrap us up for objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to claim the prize, and that is the name of the objective. This is a duel. Score this in the end phase if your warband holds each objective in 1 or more territories, including no one's territory, and your warband holds 2 or more objectives in 1 or more of those territories. So it is a more glorious. It's more points for holding objectives in 1 territory than the preceding cards of this vein. So you have Death's Domain in Crimson Court. You have Hunt's End in Skatespot Hunt. You have Reclaim the Lamentary in Yolthari's Guardian, which give you 2 glory each for holding all of the objectives in any 1 territory. This gives you 3 glory, but you have to hold at least 2 objectives. Jason is trimming his nose hair with Citadel snipping
clippers
right now.
Well, that's because
not true. Not true.
That is because Jason has some unfortunate focus. So unfortunate focus is the last objective that we're going to talk about, and there's some interesting things going on with this card. I think it is a surge. It says score immediately after the 3rd or subsequent time that an enemy fighter was chosen by and or declared as the target of a warband's spell in this phase. Okay. Do you have to cast a spell, Jerod?
Successfully? No.
Do you have to cast it at all? You just have to select a target of a spell action or like a spell attack action or a spell.
Hold that thought. Well, I think it does have to be successful. We may have made a huge mistake.
What?
If cast, choose. If cast, choose. If cast, choose.
Oh, it does have to be successful.
For Gambit spells.
But
if you
your spell attack actions
don't have to be successful. Either way, there's a lot of spells to be cast. There's a lot of ways to manipulate your dice. It's not a big deal. It's a small oversight. It's due to our unfortunate focus. So
I still think it's a good surge, and I think
I do too. I think it's a very good surge. It's because there's a lot of these that are debuffs. They're not necessarily damage spells, so the target will probably still be around for a 3rd round of these. And usually, spell attack actions are pretty low damage unless you're Heffalump. So this is a. So you made a discovery with us while we were recording, folks. Unless we want to cut it out,
no, but that's fine. I like it.
Just keep going.
Yeah. So anyway, good. It's a, cast 3 spells, pick the same fighter, you score this. It's a nice first round objective.
Yeah. And I think to just emphasize the objectives a little bit more and kind of how you need to play taking Burnt Out and Unfortunate Focus is that opening mulligan. You need to have a bunch of spells in your hand. So if you don't have 3+ spells, you probably want to ditch and draw again.
Yes.
Now there's 6 total. So let's do math here. If you have 2, you are really risking it. But if you have 1, your odds are much better to drawing up to 2 or 3. And you need those to get Burnt Out and then Unfortunate Focus. And remember, you can always draw a power card.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this could be a situation where you literally draw 3 power cards, and then your last activation is to charge with a spell attack action.
Yeah.
To get your wizard in range to attempt to cast the now 5 Gambit spells that you have in your hand.
To score Burnt Out.
And Unfortunate
Focus, which then will allow you to kind of get the glory train going.
Yeah.
Yep.
So speaking of Gambits.
Yeah. So let's focus back to what we actually should be doing. So Gambits. Jason, why don't you pick us out our first gambit that you liked?
You know what? My mind is just wiped from all this conversation, so I'm just going to take mind wipe. Before the casting roll, pick a channel or focus. That is the casting value of this spell. Gambit, if casts, choose one enemy fighter within 4 hexes of the caster. This is for the channel. The chosen fighter cannot hold objectives until the end of the round. If you choose focus, if cast, pick one feature token within 4 hexes of the caster. Move that feature token 1 hex. Key point there is like it doesn't have to be an empty feature token, which is really, well, had been rare up until this point, but it can be very powerful. And then the other, if you're going into a hold objective or kind of a passive build, you can just wipe that mine. 4 hexes is quite a long distance, very versatile, and helps you score some of the stuff.
I like it.
All right, Jerod.
Abasoth is back.
Yeah, he is.
So Abasoth's Screaming Idols. So for anybody that hasn't been playing a game for a long time, Abasoth, I guess, is a really famous wizard. I don't know. It's their name. He or she's name is on like a ton of the gambit spells anyway. So Abasoth Screaming Idols. This is a gambit spell cast on a channel. If cast, pick one feature token within 3 hexes of the caster. Move that feature token 1 hex. After you've done so, if a fighter is on that feature token, deal 1 damage to that fighter. So not only are you changing the board state, but you're also getting some plink damage. So I like it.
So I'll go last, and this is a thing that is near and dear to my heart from days gone by. This is a card called Topsy Turvy. It is a gambit. It's just a ploy. It's not a spell. It's a gambit. Pick one feature token within 5 hexes of a friendly wizard that is not in the same hex as an enemy fighter. Flip that feature token. So this helps score cards that require you to hold all of the objectives in a territory. It also forces your opponent to not, like, they have to actually delve to get the objective flipped back over. So there's a lot of cool play here. There was a whole play style built around flipping objective tokens several seasons ago. That was a lot of fun.
Feed the Beast Grave.
Yeah, Feed the Beast Grave was a thing. It was a fun card to try and score. And this kind of gives some of that back to this iteration of the game.
Yeah,
it's a little. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
It's really really versatile with Claim the Prize.
Yes,
right?
It is.
So if you get 3 objectives in the same territory, particularly your territory, you topsy-turvy one, now you only have to hold 2. So
that's right.
It can be very,
what you want to do anyway.
Yeah, it's very, very good to kind of have that play style.
Yep, I agree. All right, so we've talked about some gambits. We talked about objectives. Let's talk about some upgrades now. So, Jerod, you like talking about Abasoth before. Why don't you talk about it again?
I will. So upgrade is Abasoth's Adaptive Assault. This is a spell attack action upgrade, range 3, casts on foci for 1 damage, but it has 2 additional abilities, plus 1 damage to this spell attack action if the target is inspired, and then another plus 1 damage to this spell attack action if the target is on a feature token. So there's a lot of ways to change the board state in this game. If you're playing against a warband that wants to hold objectives, you now have a reasonably accurate, potentially 3 damage spell attack action. And this is pretty crucial in that it opens up play for other warbands that may not have their own spell attack actions for wizards. So it just gives more opportunities for that, or maybe a leaner, cleaner deck for those warbands that take this in the Nemesis format that have their own spell attack actions for like a single wizard. So
that's right. Jason, why don't you pick our next one?
I'm going to be very arcane sensitive here. Very sensitive. It's a reaction. After this fighter casts a spell, push this fighter 1 hex, restricted to a wizard. But it is amazing because it's not just like an attack action. It's cast a spell.
Yeah.
So I'm casting all these gambit spells, and I'm bopping and pushing everywhere. This is such a great utility for my wizard.
It is.
I love it.
I agree. So I'm gonna pick Yara's Repelling Shield. Yara is also a very famous wizard from there's other cards from previous seasons that there was a lot of Yara's cards around. So this card says it is restricted to a wizard. This fighter cannot be driven back. Reaction: after an enemy fighter ends a move action adjacent to this fighter, stagger that enemy fighter. So just come try and charge me. I give you a stagger token. And if you don't kill me, I'm going to have reroll. Nice utility there. So we've talked about objectives. We talked about gambits. We talked about upgrades. What boards are we taking, Jason?
Well, ones that have hexes on it.
Yeah.
But really, this comes down to whatever warband you select.
That's right.
So, I mean, this deck, although it is focused on wizards and objectives, pick the warband, then pick the board that most supports that warband's playstyle.
And the playstyle that you really want to kind of take in mind when you're thinking about this deck is it's a flex playstyle, but it is more of a flex hold, not really a flex aggro. So it's casting aggro or casting hold. Oh my gosh, it's casting and holding. Yep. So get somewhere, sit your butt on an objective, cast a bunch of spells. That's kind of what you want to do. So find warbands that kind of align with that goal, and you should do fine with this deck. Speaking of warbands, Jerod, what warbands do you think align well with this deck?
Yeah, so I think really what you want to focus on is a warband that has wizard or wizards with spell attack actions on their fighter card, because it's just going to make it easier for you to get those spell attack actions off, to cast spells, give you more opportunities for that, to take fighters out of action with spell attack actions. So that's, Domitan, obviously, Stormsire, Exiled Dead, Kagha's Ravagers. I mean, that list goes on, right? There are a ton of those. But another one that we think is good for this deck is Crimson Court, because there are 2 wizards, and there are a lot of gambits in this deck for increasing the wizard level for like a power step or for an activation, so you can get more accurate casts off with those. And the Crimson Court, just their stat blocks are good. So now you have 2 wizards that can help you cast those spells, and then you've got 2 beaters that can kind of play the rest of the field. There are a lot of options, but I think Domitan, Stormsire, Crimson Court, Exiled Dead, Kagha's Ravagers are probably our favorites, just because of the resilience of the fighters in those warbands, the ability to stick around, and yeah.
And I would also throw in the Wormspat too. She's got they're pretty sturdy too. Not as many activations, so something to think about. 4 activations in a round, obviously, but not. There's 3 fighters there. And then with Kagha, the play focus with this almost shifts a little bit to where you have to kind of focus on Zarshia as your primary for that. And then the 3 Chaos Warriors basically become like her bodyguard. So you can just be reckless with Kagha herself and focus on Zarshia. And then there's some other fun things in there where you can make Zarshia the leader, so on and so forth. Yep. So there's some cool things there. New player rating. We're thinking what? Silver for this?
I think silver.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Cast spells. Stand
on stuff.
It's going to be relying on the wizard. So like if the wizard goes down.
Yep. You might be hosed. Yep.
Yeah.
And then Nemesis rating. I think it's also going to be silver. It's like we said already, it's really dependent on wizards, but it's also pretty fun and direct to play with. So that, I think, wraps us up with Seismic Shock. Any final thoughts before we move on to Toxic Tears?
No, I'm excited. I'm excited to fail some more with the Othari with it.
Right? It's just a cool deck. I think from a building standpoint, this deck has a lot to offer, but it just breathes so much life into all those casters that we've had in the past.
Yeah. I agree.
That's why it's so cool.
I agree. All right. Shocking.
But not toxic. So I'm going to take the mic from Trace, and we're going to go through Toxic Terrors. No warband fighter cards to cover because there are no fighters. And then championship players rejoice again. Yet another Rivals deck without a plot card. So
3-3.
3 for 3 in the last 3 Rivals decks. So tons of options for everybody looking to play championship. So with that, we're just going to jump in. So key cards, again, these are the cards that you want to see early in the game because we think that they help fuel kind of what the deck is going to do. On the objective side, I'm actually going to take things and we're going to talk about Deluge of Toxins. So this is a surge objective. Score this immediately after a power step if 2 or more friendly poison gambits are persisting or 3 or more friendly gambits are persisting. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gambits, 5 poisons in this deck as it is. So getting 2 of those out, it's probably not going to be that difficult. And it's a surge, so gets that glory train running. Jason.
Something to think about too is that domains fall into that too. So if you have a warband that has domains, you can.
If we're talking Nemesis,
Toxic Demise, which is also a surge. Score this immediately after an enemy fighter affected by 1 or more persisting poison gambits is taken out of action. As you just kind of went through, there are a lot of poison gambits that are persisting. So take somebody out of action and score a gory.
Love it.
Seems pretty easy.
Trace?
Dual Contamination. Scores, it's a hybrid end phase objective. Scores in an end phase if 2 or more poison gambits are persisting, or 2 or more friendly fighters each have 1 or more poison upgrades. A poison upgrade, you say?
Yeah, poison upgrade. Interesting.
Yeah.
More to come on that. Sweet.
And again, like as you noticed from our selection of objectives, you need poison gambits in your hand turn 1 to do this. Remember the mulligan.
Remember the mulligan. Yep. All right, sweet. So that covers objectives. Speaking of poison gambits, so Jason, what are we thinking we want to see early?
I'm just gonna go with Choking Venom 1 because I like the art. You know, it looks
it's a cool art.
Cool.
Vomiting all over Belmorn.
Poison. Choose 1 friendly fighter. That friendly fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack action have Grievous 1. This effect persists until the end of the round or until the chosen fighter makes a successful range 1, range 2 attack action.
Nice.
I love me some Grievous. And it's so cool that it persists until you make a successful attack.
I like it. All right, Trace.
I'm ill-prepared for this right now.
That stinks.
So, ill-prepared is the gambit I am choosing. It is a poison. Choose 1 enemy fighter on a starting hex. Give the chosen fighter 1 move token. The chosen fighter cannot make attack actions while that fighter is on a starting hex. This effect persists until the end of the round or until a damage is dealt to the chosen fighter.
Oof.
It is dirty.
That is dirty.
Just
so
dirty. You lock somebody into their starting zone, and even if you come close to them, they cannot attack you.
Nope.
It's gross.
Unless they come off and they can't even make a charge because they have a move token. It's
right.
So they'd have to move off of it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And it doesn't even have to be in their area. It just says starting hex. So like they charge and just happen to land.
Right. Yeah.
It's so good.
Oh my gosh. Nice.
It's real good.
Yeah. And so the last one that we want to see early, we think, is Freezing Venom. So this is another poison. Choose 1 enemy fighter. The chosen fighter can not make super actions, and attack actions that target the chosen fighter have ensnare. This effect persists until the end of the round or until the chosen fighter makes an attack action or until the chosen fighter is dealt damage. So, yikes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that is the Bulgor. The Minotaur. On the card art.
The best of Ghur, yeah. He's getting
what's
whacked.
His name? Not Gashrak.
No.
Gashrak's the main guy. You're talking about Darken.
I don't remember.
Darknar?
I feel real bad
Darknar?
now. Dragnar.
Dragnar.
Nice.
There you go.
We got it. Yep.
Anyway,
so who you want to charge, right? I'm thinking about also like Gristlewell, right? It's a great fighter to hit. Gristlewell is a great fighter to hit. So somebody that's got a dodge defense that wants to make charge actions.
Mm-hmm.
Too bad. All right. That covers objectives and gambits. So upgrades. I'm going to start first because I'm callous, and that's also the name of the upgrade. This is a poison upgrade. We mentioned poison upgrades earlier. It's worth noting, I believe 9 of the 10 upgrades are poisons.
Wow.
I believe
pretty sure that Sneaky Weasel is the only upgrade that is not a poison.
You're a sneaky weasel.
I know, right? So Callus is a poison upgrade. +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions if the target is affected by 1 or more persisting poison gambits and or this fighter has 2 or more poison upgrades. This is a poison upgrade. So if the fighter only has 1 other poison upgrade, now they suddenly have a +1 damage.
It's pretty good.
Upgrade. Like it. Jason?
Venom Bite Weapons. So this is another poison upgrade. Go figure, right? Yep. Play this only if there are 1 or more poison gambits in your power discard pile. When you give this upgrade to a fighter, pick 1 poison gambit from your discard pile and put it beneath this card. Reaction. After this fighter's successful attack action, place the poison gambit beneath this card in your hand, then pick up to 1 poison gambit from your power discard pile and put it beneath this card. So the reason I like this is because it just recycles the cool poisons that are in my gambit hand. And I just think it's a really cool mechanic. It allows you to double down on a lot of those poisons. And, like you didn't like freezing Venom turn 1? Well, I'll just freezing Venom you turn 2. Oh, you were ill prepared? Well, guess what? You're ill prepared again. Don't know what to tell you, but they just keep coming.
All right. Trace.
Well, Jason's a wicked hunter for picking that card. So this is a upgrade. It's also a poison upgrade. Reaction. After you play a poison gambit, push this fighter 1 hex. Then stagger each enemy fighter adjacent to this fighter. So you have your Venom Bite weapons on. You play one of those. Yeah, there's some cool stuff there. Push after you play a poison gambit, stagger some dudes.
That's great.
Then attack them. It's real good.
Also, the flavor text and card art.
Yes.
So this fighter longs to see blood and poison mixed in horrid swirls on the ground. And then you have Mr. Markov sitting crisscross applesauce on the ground, painting horrid swirls in blood and poison on the ground around him.
It's like if you
world's worst finger paint.
It's like if you watched the Game of Thrones and where the White Walkers arrange all the different body parts. It's basically the same thing, just with blood and poison.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So similar to Seismic Shock, when it comes to boards, you just want to pick boards that make sense for the warband that you have chosen to play with this. So Jason, what do we see as playstyle?
Playstyle is aggro, but it's almost it's aggro, but it's almost denial with the type of gambits that you have. Like there's a lot of control where you're setting up your aggro in there. Like it's definitely aggro. You want to be attacking and doing things from an objective side, but those gambits, man, can just lock it down.
Yeah, I would even say it's an aggro, like a flex aggro control deck. I just think there's a lot of utility in these cards that can really be annoying.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I agree. Trace, what warbands are we thinking here?
If you've got poisons already in your faction deck, give this a look. If you're if you're thinking from a Nemesis perspective. But really any warband could work fine with this if you're running it as a rivals deck, I think. Things with fairly accurate attacks are going to align well with this, like what Jason said. Like, you can basically play aggro, but have some control elements in there as well. So Elethane Soul Raid, Rippa Snarlfang, Skittershank's Claw Pack, I think would be interesting with this. I haven't actually looked into that, but from a thematic perspective, I think that this would be very, very good with them. Yeah.
Sweet. So I think as a rivals deck for a new player rating, I think we're still kind of stuck in silver. It's very straightforward, but it's kind of tightly bound into the card draw. Like, you're going to be really reliant on getting the right poison gambits out to score the objectives, or getting poison upgrades on your fighters to score the objectives that require those. And so, like, figuring out that mechanic and when maybe to draw cards or when to mulligan or whatever, I think is not going to be as straightforward as other decks. And so I think that's going to keep it from being gold. The way that the deck scores is pretty straightforward, but it's going to be utilizing your gambits and your upgrades properly to make all of that happen a little more difficult. And then, Jason, what are we thinking for on the Nemesis side?
Yeah, so the Nemesis side is actually going to be a little more difficult, because typically, like, in a perfect world, when you're playing Nemesis, you're taking 6 objectives from your faction, from your warband, 6 objectives from the rivals deck. Most of the objectives in this deck, specifically the Surge, revolve around poison. So if you're then cutting the cards that you're taking out of gambits and upgrades, you don't have the redundancy from the poison to kind of make it fully work. Now, there's still a lot to build in here. There's a couple end phase that are actually pretty easy to score, that do not require poison. So there is some building there, but I mean, we're going to give it a bronze just because a lot of the objectives are so focused on the gambits. But those gambits are so good. Like, that poison. They really did poison right. Like, we've seen poison kind of come through before. It was like, oh yeah, it's poison. Like, these poison gambits and upgrades feel like a true poison thing, and I can't wait to see what the community comes up with it, because I'm just starting to kind of think things through, and I don't have a really good thought on what warband I'm going to take with them. I know Latham from Discord has posted 2 Toxic Terrors decks for us, and they are included on our library. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going off memory, but they're both elves. That is the Blade Coven and Soul Raid, I believe, are the 2 decks.
Soul Raid was the other one. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was Blade Coven and Soul Raid.
Blade Coven and it looks like Soul Raid. Yep. Soul Raid.
So we have those up there, but I think there's hidden builds here. So get out there and start making them up, and please share.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what gets made of it too. Cool. So I think that's it. That wraps up our review. So we'll take a break and we'll come back with the outro. And we're back, and that will wrap up the 50th episode of the Battle Mallet podcast. We just want to say thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging in the Discord. So we've seen some growth in the Discord, some growth in the community there, which is cool. Great interactions going on there. If you have a deck that you've built for Nemesis, if you're not familiar, we have a Nemesis library on our website. So battle-mallet.com is the landing page for everything. You can get to the blog, you can get to the podcast, you can get to the Nemesis library from there. And so it's just a resource that we want to be a living resource for getting new players started in Nemesis, or kicking off ideas for veteran players, so you don't have to start from scratch. So please, jump on there, jump in the Discord. Links to the Discord and everything will be in the show notes. Shout out again to What the Hexcast for their deep dive into all of the new seasonal changes in Wyrdhollow. So be sure to go check out their podcast for the deep dive into that. But I think that's it. Any other community shout outs?
Captain Murder's tournament.
Oh yeah. So the Alberta Classic.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a Grand Clash. And I think, as far as I know, it's the only Clash that's going to have 3 golden tickets.
3.
Am I making that up?
It has
3 golden tickets.
I don't know if it's the only one, but I know it has 3.
Yeah. So for the Masters, or whatever they're calling the Grand Championship match in Atlanta in November, for Warhammer Underworlds. So if you're on the West Coast, right? That's where Alberta is.
Yes.
Over on the west.
It's out that way.
I'm not. My Canadian geography is horrible. So the only thing I know about Calgary, Alberta, Canada is that's where the Hart brothers from WWF are from.
Oh man, way to go!
I know, callback, right?
Deep cuts by Jerod.
Deep cuts. That's right. So anyway,
and then the other community shout outs. Anyone local to the Raleigh-Durham area, we'll have our bi-weekly meetup on the 15th, which will be a learn to play Wyrdhollow event. So looking to get the new warbands, new boards, new dice, all that stuff out there. And
come play for my birthday.
Oh, is that your birthday?
It's my birthday. His birthday.
Happy early birthday.
Come play games on my birthday.
There you go. Come play games.
Yeah.
Sweet. And then shout out to Fish Mode for joining the Discord, and really shout out to the Seattle Warhammer Underworlds group. I'm trolling silently in their local Discord, and they've got pretty good thing going out there. A lot of growth and player growth. So great to see the game growing on the West Coast. And then last but not least, thank you, Sleek Bull, for poking and prodding us and not allowing me to do anything until we recorded this episode. Yeah. So I would have been at your tournament today. I hope it went well. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for your contributions to the community and all the things that you do. So with that, that's all the community shout outs. Jerod.
Nice. I think that's it. So for the Battle Mallet podcast, we have just used so many puns based on card names already. We got nothing. We are 3 Warhammer Underworlds players who are just in awe of Ephilim and his Woozles. This is Jerod signing out.
Stray signing out.
And I'm Jason Tabledoon Murray. Get the hell out of here.
Peace.
Go Bills.
The Battle Mallet podcast is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find more information via links on podcast.battle-mallet.com. Music by Anno Domini Beats. All right, cool. Are we ready? We're going to go live at the 1 minute mark.
Oh, then we'll only have an hour and 59 minutes to record this episode.
Son of a...